Dear viewers, welcome and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. It brings me great pleasure to be a host today for the Ahmadi Muslim community's big virtual iftar. And on this pleasant Friday evening, weather's lovely. It's been a great day today in regards to remembering our fallen heroes as well and veterans and those that are still alive as part of the Victory in Europe Day, where we've stood together in terms of our solidarity, togetherness and unity to just show that at 11 o'clock when we did the silence. But as we have you here today to rejoice in our festivities and have members of the variety of community from an interfaith organization to join us, I just wanted to highlight for those that haven't been on the Big Virtual Iftar before and those that have been on it, welcome back to you. A few points for today's session. As I run through those things, you may want to get a pen and paper out just to be able to document some of things. We would try and make this session as engaging and productive as possible. It's just want to give a bit of background in terms of why we do these big virtual iftars. Generally, if it wasn't a lockdown, we didn't have the coronavirus, we'd be meeting up happily together, enjoying, sitting around and discussing what Ramadan is, getting rid of and demystifying some of the misconceptions about Ramzan, and also enjoying a meal with our family and friends together. And this brings, great interfaith dialogue, interaction, and that rich culture and diversity that we have in the United Kingdom. There's been a series of these webinars. This is the third in those series, and it's been put together by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association. During these talks, you'll have a lot of opportunity to ask questions. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that you can send in your questions at any point using the live chat from YouTube. You can SMS, you can email us, you can use Facebook and also Twitter. The Facebook handle is at True Islam UK, and the Twitter handle is at True_Islam UK with the hashtag Big Virtual Iftar. The second thing I just wanted to mention is we will have polling. So to take part in that interactive poll, you need to visit www.slido.com and enter the code BVI. I will mention this again later on when we get to the poll, but it's important that you simultaneously do this. So if you've got your laptops on, get your handsets out so that you don't break the transmission as we're going on today. As it's customary for us to start all our events, we start with the recitation of the Holy Quran. So I was going to go on for us to listen to the recitation of the Holy Quran now.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر.
That you've just heard in terms of recitation and we're able to follow in terms of its understanding. I wanted to give you a bit of an introduction to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. So to take that journey, we're going to watch a video together in terms of what the Ahmadiyya community is, what it's all about, who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. So let's go to the video about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
In the last 100 years, Islam Ahmadiyyat has been one of the fastest growing communities in the world. It is a worldwide movement founded simply on faith and submission to the will of God. A community so simple, yet so highly organized to meet the demands and challenges of the ever-changing world. A community believing in absolute morality, justice and fairness in every sphere of human life. It believes that the Reformer in the latter days, foretold to all religions, has come, and through him the whole of mankind will be united in the worship of one God. It serves humanity in projecting the message of peace. It alleviates the suffering of mankind throughout the world. Continents across the world have been united under its banner. But all this began with the life of a single ordinary man and a divine message. A religious leader specifically commissioned by God to lead mankind as the promised reformer, the Messiah of the latter days. His name was Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. It was revealed to him that he would be a soldier from God, wearing the garments of different prophets, combining in his own person the qualities and the role and spiritual powers of all the great reformers whose advent had been promised by previous prophets. He proclaimed that God had chosen Islam for the universal and final manifestation of his unity. Thus, in accordance with God's divine command, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad claimed to be that reformer who was destined to be raised in Islam. He did not bring any new teaching and came in complete subordination to the Prophet Muhammad, the last bearing prophet. May peace and blessings of God be upon him. He came to revive faith in the Creator, to restore Islam to its pristine beauty, and to unite all faiths in the worship of one God. Founded in 1889, the community has continued to spread throughout the world, flourishing under Caliphate, the system of spiritual leadership established after the demise of the Holy Founder. True Caliphate has the ability to serve as a grand force for good in the world. True Caliphate, which exists on the precepts of justice, consideration for the rights of others, and an overall deep will for peace, as defined by the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him. Since the demise of the promised Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, may the peace and blessings of God be upon him, his successors have continued his work of reviving the spiritual and moral state of mankind. The movement embodies the benevolent message of Islam and its pristine purity. A movement that preaches peace, universal brotherhood, and submission to the will of God. Ahmadi Muslims have earned the distinction and reputation of being a law-abiding, peaceful community serving mankind. Within a century, the movement has reached all corners of the earth and has been recognized and praised by the global community. Wherever the movement has been established, its endeavors to exert a constructive influence through social projects, educational institutes, health services, Islamic publications. The community's many social projects are aimed at helping those in need and bears testimony to humanitarian concerns in respect of all human beings, regardless of race, color, or creed. The current successor of this movement is Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad. This man is the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and the Caliph of Islam. His followers number tens of millions and are spread over 200 countries across the world. This makes him the leader of the largest single group of Muslims in the world who follow one Imam. He is known by world leaders for his humanitarian efforts and his mission for world peace. He has traveled extensively to spread the message of peace and to remind everyone to respect the rights of other human beings. The community's slogan is love for all, hatred for none, and this epitomizes its desire to establish a world built on justice and freedom of conscience as taught by the Holy Prophet Muhammad. May the peace and blessings of God be upon him. During these tours, His Holiness has met world leaders, from the Far East to Europe, from North America to Africa, discussing the economic, social, and political problems facing the world today and how to create peace and justice in the world. The Caliph has spoken at Capitol Hill, the British Parliament, the European Parliament, and has held court with dozens of world leaders. He is celebrated as the champion of peace by leaders across the world. He has also met religious and community leaders in order to share common values and core ideals, universal to all religions and cultures. From young to old, he compassionately listens to the ordinary man regardless of race, color, or religion. He has personally initiated social projects and schemes to alleviate poverty and human suffering. His concern is not just about the well-being and moral state of the members of the Ahmadi community, but of the great human suffering of mankind at large.
I firmly believe that if we truly wish to protect our world and to ensure we leave behind a legacy of opportunity for those who follow us, it is essential that every effort is made to raise the standards of the developing world. Poor nations must not be looked down upon. Rather, we should consider them as part of our family, our brothers and sisters. By helping the developing nations stand on their own feet and by giving their people opportunities and hope, we will actually be helping ourselves and safeguarding the future of the world.
For all of our friends that have joined for the first time today, I hope you found that video very interesting and gave you a high-level insight into the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Like I said, we are going to make this session engaging, so we come to our first question of the poll. Again, I'll just mention to those that have just attended or just joined, to take part in the interactive poll, you just need to visit www.slido.com and enter the code BVI. The first question you'll see pop up on the screen will be: Muslims develop their spirituality through prayers and sincere worship of God. What helps you develop your spirituality? You've got 4 options there, and choose the option that fits best to your needs. So prayers, meditation, yoga, or spending time in nature. So we're seeing quite an interesting information that's coming in. Prayers is vastly, in terms of leading in the percentage-wise, in terms of responses that we've had. Meditation and spending time in nature is head-to-head, neck and neck in terms of what it is. So yeah, definitely prayers is the one that majority of people are mentioning. We've still got some time for responses to come in. So if you haven't got your iPads out, your Android machines or your laptops, please do take part in the poll. It's very easy. Go to slido.com and enter the code BVI. And like I said, to followers, continue to hashtag in terms of the Big Virtual Iftar. Right then, I'm gonna move on to our first presenter for today. I'm just going to introduce this gentleman. His name is Dr. Jalil Bhatti. He studied neuroscience in King's College in London. He's working as a psychiatrist as we speak. However, he didn't think that was enough, so he's gone out to further his studies in terms of further education and conduct a PhD. His topic for today is, which is a very interesting one, proven physical and mental health benefits of fasting. Dr. Jalil Bhatti.
Slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. In regards to the topics I'll be covering today, I'll be talking about the physical health benefits, psychological benefits, healthy lifestyle choices, and how to implement the change. Next slide, please. So one of the first things we have to remember is that the physical health benefits come about due to something called caloric deficit or restriction. I will come to that in a second, what that means. However, generally on a day-to-day basis, before we start with Ramadan. Usually, most of the time, we sometimes have ultra processed foods, or we snack on things that are high in carbohydrates, high in sugars, that are negative and detrimental to our physical health. And Ramadan and fasting allows us to take a break from these ultra processed foods and allows us to make us healthier lifestyle choices, because most of us prepare healthy meals every day. Next slide, please. So caloric deficit. So what that means is usually our body uses up more energy than it gets in from the meals that we eat. And that is achieved because of the fasting that we do. So in the morning, when we have our meals, roughly about 3:50 in the morning, and then we have a fasting state for 12 to 14 hours. And in the evening, usually around 8:30 or 8:40, we then break or open or fast again. It allows us to at least have 12 to 14 hours. That's where the body initially has used up the energy from the meals, and then it goes into using our own stored energy resources from our own internal body. And the science behind that is every person has a basal metabolic range, meaning every person, if they would not do any activity whatsoever, they would be burning a certain amount of energy that's dependent on height, weight, and age. And because of the fasting, usually we would be burning more energy than we would be getting in through the meals. Next slide, please. So some of the physical health benefits that come about immediately or even within a short period of time is the improved insulin sensitivity. So what that means is usually when we have more regular meals or when we snack in between, there are insulin spikes. And over a long period of time, that's detrimental for us and it has negative effects, and it predisposes us to things like diabetes, to cardiovascular problems, meaning like heart attacks, high blood pressure, and strokes, etc., and so on. And also because of the insulin spikes and increased carbohydrates, our body experiences chronic inflammatory processes as well. So it means our body is experiencing increased stress that it shouldn't do. But at the same time, fasting reduces those stresses, but also in certain physical health conditions like asthma, arthritis, and also in severe conditions like multiple sclerosis, some research has shown that those conditions improve as well. On an organ level, it's also not just solely focused on heart, liver, and brain, but these are some of the most important ones. For example, in the heart, it reduces blood pressure and it slows down the heart rate. And I will come towards the positive effects on the brain in the next slide. And please, if you can go back one slide. Okay, it's fine. So, and one of the improvements are also in the cholesterol levels as well. So it reduces the negative cholesterol, which is the LDL, and it improves the positive, increases that HLDL. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in regards to the positive effects on our brain, there's more research in animal studies. However, more recently, also human studies have shown that intermittent fasting specifically, because that's what the main research is on, and caloric restriction likely reduces risk of developing neurodegenerative conditions, for example, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and some others as well, and very likely also has beneficial effects on mental health conditions as well. It also enhances and supercharges our immune system as well to a certain degree, so we become more protective against infections, and at the same time it removes damaged cells that would be predisposing us to, for example, cancer, if these cells would undergo more damage. So the risk of developing cancer is reduced further. And a very, very interesting aspect of this is, which is at the moment mainly researched on humans, but there's a single or very few studies on humans as well, that actually in animals it prolongs life by up to 40%. And there's an interesting study that was carried out in Okinawa in Japan. And the population over there have intermittent fasting or fasting as the normal lifestyle. And they lived for much longer than people in the rest of Japan and the rest of the world as well, because they were eating 11% less calories than they would require on a daily basis, meaning the basal metabolic rate. And the main diet would consist of beans, pulses, sweet potatoes, and vegetables. and they had much lower risk of developing heart conditions, obesity, and diabetes. Next slide, please. So what are the psychological benefits? And we can classify them, we can divide them in different bits. So there's the physical health psychological benefits, but then also the personal benefits as well in regards to how we feel and things. Because Ramadan comes about very suddenly from pre-Ramadan, meaning no fasting, to suddenly to fasting that goes on for 30 days, it's according to habit theory and learning theory, it's a very good way of us developing new habits and keeping those habits. It takes roughly about 28 and can take up to 66 days for us to develop new habits and keep them. So that's very good. And at the same time, the habits we should be focusing on are things to keep our passions and emotions in control, keeping our anger in control, while at the same time being kind and looking after our family, our friends, and also thinking about how people who are less fortunate than ourselves. And because, for example, charity is the fourth pillar of Islam, also consider more so charitable activities as well. Another important bit is that we have the 5 daily prayers minimum, and at the same time, so the 5 daily prayers allows us to break the day into multiple parts. So we would wake up in the morning, we would have the breakfast in the morning, we would have the morning prayer, we would go for a short period of sleep, then prepare for our work, have a prayer at work, work for a few more hours, and then we would make our way home. We would pray again, and then we would have time for our family, time for individual development, spiritually or personally or professionally, and then we would prepare our meals for the evening, and then we would have the night prayers as well. So this routine, specifically in the lockdown time, is very important because it gives us a sense of purpose at the same time. Interesting enough, so the physical health and the psychological benefits in regards to the brain is it improves concentration, it improves attention, and it improves specifically memory as well, which some people find very bizarre to believe, but that is very true. And one study has shown, for example, that participants who fasted for up to 2 years intermittently, their memory improved, the working memory, meaning the immediate recall of things, improved dramatically. And in regards to mental health and well-being, people who usually have low self-esteem and also can feel more anxious, and that's specifically in regards to Ramadan fasting, they can have a sense of belonging, a sense of being part of a wider community. So that's specifically very important. The self-control, the change of habits, and the sense of belonging are specific to Ramadan and not to intermittent fasting. Next slide, please. So some of the healthy lifestyle choices that you can have is considering having vitamin-rich food, meaning nutrient foods that are rich in nutrients, and having a balanced diet, meaning less carbohydrates, less sugars, and more protein, and having even a decent amount in unsaturated fats. So having leafy vegetable, having colored fruit, and the NHS Eat Well website is very good for that. So they would mention things like potatoes, rice, and pasta, beans and pulses, and so on. And it's also very important that at the same time we reduce the sugar intake. So that's in the morning and in the evening, because that is actually having a detrimental effect on our health, and that has many detrimental effects, as I mentioned earlier on. Another important bit is staying active, even during the fasting state. Usually the recommended guideline is 30 minutes walk. However, the WHO actually goes even further and mentions we should be walking up to an hour. And at the same time, to not have a sedentary lifestyle, meaning sitting less. So active standing of 2 to 4 hours daily is very important to prevent us of having things like cardiovascular disease, obesity, and diabetes, and so on and so forth. And lastly, it's very important for us to have adequate rest of 6 to 8 hours. Next slide, please. So how do we implement these changes? And there's different theories in regards to in psychology in regards to how to change habit and behavior. But one of the newer theories is the COMP-B theory. What it stands for is capability, opportunity, and motivation. So in regards to capabilities, having the knowledge and the skill and the competence, so knowing what it is that you want to change. And the opportunity is actually having a social, physical, cultural, time and resource, and that can include financial as well. But at the time in lockdown, I think overall most of us do have the time to do some changes. And lastly, it's important to have the motivation, and that's mostly where people fall short, the planning and desire to change. And there it is very important for us to actually get the support from our family, from our friends to encourage us, and we reverse encourage them to change as well. Next slide, please. So some of the practical steps to think about in regards to how to bring about positive states. When we, for example, have a meal and we want to reduce the stress to our bodies, is to think about how much we're going to eat. And one of the ways to go about that is to control the portion sizes, because the brain finds out after 20 minutes that your stomach is actually full. So if you chew for longer, maybe for chew each bite up to 40 times, some evidence has shown that that helps in knowing, letting your brain know when you feel less hungry, and it reduces excess eating. At the same time, sometimes some of us have a feast of dishes in the evening when we open a fast. So reducing to fewer dishes, because you try to have every bit, and if you have a feast, you will try to have every bit. And use fresh fruit and vegetables in the dishes that you have. And if you want to implement the change, get your family on board, try healthier recipes. And lastly, not to forget, it's important for us that our aim is the spiritual development, but also that if you want to have other aspects of improvement, we have to recognize how we are before Ramadan and recognize and plan what positive benefits we want to achieve, and make and plan with our family, and let them encourage us and we encourage them in return. So that's overall, in summary, I touched upon the physical and psychological benefits and talked about healthy lifestyle choices and how to go about and get achieving them. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatti, for that. Very insightful. And I think we definitely need a plenty of motivation, if you're saying, to reduce the dishes down, especially as the iftar time gets closer. And I certainly know people probably need plenty of motivation as they're in lockdown at the moment, in terms of getting their kids, in terms of school, homeschooling and so forth. This nicely brings me on to our second poll. So have your fingers ready to the buzzers, guys, to take part in our second question for today. We'll go to the poll. The studies have shown that the practice of mindfulness through mediation or prayer, or meditation or prayer, strengthens mental resilience. When was the last time you prayed or meditated? So you got 4 options there. Today, last week, last 3 months, or over a year. So it seems like we're having a clear winner out here at the moment. People saying today. I think a lot of people, especially with the lockdown, might be seeing that, and those that are probably taking part, even not our non-Muslim friends, sometimes are trying out fasting and taking part in prayers and so forth in some shape or form. Like I said, if you've just joined again, do go to take part in the active poll on slider.com and just enter the code BVI. And those that have joined just now, do hashtag us on and follow us on hashtag Big Virtual Iftar. As we're coming to closer, as the votes keep coming in to the poll, again, like I said, majority are saying today. Last week and over a year ago is 3%, neck and neck there, but the clear outwinner here is today. I was going to move on to our next speaker now. We really are going global with this today. I'm going to go across to my friend Tariq Malik, who is across the pond in the States. And just a bit of background to Tariq. He studied Islamic studies at the Ohio State University in the USA. He's a life devotee of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, meaning he's dedicated his life to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He serves as the North and South American coordinator of the Real Religions, one of the longest periodicals that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has been going on, which covers an array of subjects from science to religion to economics, etc. It gives me great pleasure in introducing Tariq Malik.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Peace be upon you. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. I've recited chapter 2, verse 156 of the Holy Quran before you. The translation is as follows. And we will try you with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient. The topic of my speech today is how to develop our mental resilience, the link between quarantine and fasting, and how does Islamic fasting impact our resilience. It would not be wrong to say that each and every single one of us has been affected by this global pandemic. First and foremost, we have those individuals who are impacted by this directly, such as those who have lost loved ones or those who are dealing with it personally, like getting sick or treating someone who is sick or losing their jobs. Then we have those who are getting anxious, depressed, and angry because they are not being able to follow their daily routines. They're not able to meet their loved ones. So just recently, a few weeks ago, my auntie, she lost her brother in New York to COVID-19. She wasn't able to meet him before his demise. She wasn't able to say her goodbyes or even attend his funeral. She wasn't able to comfort and console her brother's wife and children who are currently dealing with this on their own. But regardless of all these different types of stress and anxiety and depression that we do face and we are facing in our own different levels, it should always be kept in mind that we should definitely be more sensitive towards what everybody is going through. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what level of stress or what level of grief we're all facing, mental health is a very important topic, and it is very important to discuss it, and it should not be taken lightly. Just a few months ago, or I would say almost 8 to 9 weeks ago, before this lockdown started, we learned something as a society. We as a society learned that in the past few months, before the lockdown started, that we learned that living here in the Western part of the world, we have taken far too many things for granted. We learned that we have become so comfortable in our life and in our ways that when adversity struck us, we started running around literally like headless chickens, like completely panicking and tense and nervous and just fearing about what's happening. There were reports of panic buying and people totally losing it over toilet paper. Like out of all things you can imagine, people completely lost their minds on toilet paper. Now, God knows what all that toilet paper is needed for them. I have no idea, but this was definitely on the news. One can only act in such a manner when that person is only giving precedence to their own survival over others. Whereas at this point, as we have all learned, that the survival of our frontline heroes is what should take precedence. We have our doctors and nurses who are working on the front lines, and they're putting their lives and the lives of their loved ones at home at risk by doing so with less protective equipment as well. And they deserve and they should be given precedence, and their life matters more at this point than people who are hoarding food or toilet paper and stuff like that. So that is just the mindset that needs to be shifted. Now, Ramadan could not have come at a better time, especially this year for Muslims. And that's why we're here to talk about it, to tell everybody what we are doing right now with Ramadan. Fasting grants us that bigger picture, which we sometimes fail to see, especially during a time of crisis such as the one we face today. The pangs of hunger produce feelings of sympathy towards humanity. It promotes selfless behavior instead of selfish behavior. The verse which I recited earlier, the translation, as I'm going to repeat it, the translation was, "And we will try you with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient." Give glad tidings to the patient. That is exactly what Ramadan is all about. That is exactly what fasting teaches us. Be patient to see the bigger picture. At the end of the day, we as human beings, as individuals, whether we are Muslims or we're non-Muslims or we practice another faith or we just believe in God, at the end of the day, we are supposed to, it's a natural cycle of life to face death, face financial troubles. And that's why God is saying in the Holy Quran that patience is that virtue which is needed to overcome everything. On an individual level, one of the leading causes of depression is idleness. You can see like Ramzan bring with it a packed schedule, so that instead of binge watching YouTube, Netflix videos, or TikTok videos, time is spent reciting the Holy Quran, because it is highly encouraged that every Muslim should try, or at least try really hard and finish one recitation of the entire Holy Quran, because the Holy Quran was the book which was revealed, which the revelation of the Holy Quran was started in the month of Ramadan, and every single year in Ramadan, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam received Gabriel, the angel Gabriel would come and would recite the entire Holy Quran to him in that entire month. So it kept on happening throughout his lifetime. And keeping that in mind, Muslims are encouraged to recite the entire Holy Quran. Now, on top of that, there are 5 daily prayers which have to be offered on time. And on top of that, there are voluntary prayers, such as the Tarawih prayers, which are offered before going to sleep at night, and the Tahajjud prayer, which are offered in the middle of the night. Now, the act of waking up in the middle of the night alone to pray is enough to conquer our demons. If fasting is added to that, it can literally take an individual to another level. All these activities grant us immense feeling of accomplishment and self-empowerment. There are many physical benefits of Ramadan and fasting, which have been mentioned in the previous presentation. But I would like to bring up intermittent fasting here, for example. It is really huge in the fitness industry right now. However, the mental and spiritual benefits of fasting are much greater. Fasting really develops our resilience as individuals and stretches our patience and tolerance, as we are constantly being tested to our limits and asked to give up those desires if even we are allowed normally for the sake of God. Muslims develop their spirituality and pray to their God, but a person who is not a Muslim can also fast and simply meditate to experience the benefits of fasting. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah and the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, stated, "Therefore, a fast means that a person should refrain from the physical food that nourishes the body and acquire another form of food that is a means of comforting and nourishing the soul. Those individuals who observe the fast purely for the sake of God and do not do so as a mere tradition, they should remain engaged in praising God Almighty and also seeking His protection." So once again, the goal isn't to just fast, it's also to fulfill all the duties and all the responsibilities that come with fasting. Otherwise, we're just starving ourselves, and the point isn't to just starve. At another place, the promised Messiah, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, he said, "It should be remembered that the fast does not mean merely that a person should abstain from food and drink over a certain period. During the fast, one should be occupied greatly with the remembrance of God. The Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, occupied himself greatly with worship during the month of Ramadan. During that month, one should discard one's preoccupation with eating and drinking and cutting asunder from these needs, should address oneself wholly towards God. Unfortunate is the one who is bestowed material bread and pays no attention to spiritual bread. Material bread strengthens the body. The spiritual bread sustains the soul and sharpens the spiritual faculties. Seek the grace of God, as all doors are open by His grace." At the end, I would just like to say, I'm not a salesperson and I'm not selling fasting at this point, but trust me on this when I say this. Just try fasting. Just fast tomorrow and see how that works out for you. Jazakallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq, for that enlightening talk. Very inspirational, as always. Our thoughts and prayers, obviously, with your family and your auntie in terms of losing your loved ones, and also for all of those people that have lost their loved ones during these unprecedented times with the COVID crisis. You know, like I said, our prayers and thoughts go out to all of you. Before I move on, and for those that may have just joined, and a reminder for those that are with us, apologies for some of the technical issues that we had whilst Tariq's talk was going on. I know our team was able to correct that, but the narrative that you gave, I'm sure you've all been able to follow. Just as a reminder, so that when we get to the Q&A side of things, you can submit your questions, comments, queries into us on the live chat on YouTube, SMS, email, Facebook, and Twitter. The information is presented there for you, so please do get that information in. I'm going to go to our final question of the poll, and this is the last one for today. It is: the physical benefits of fasting have now been well documented in society. Did you know that fasting also has great mental health benefits? Is that yes, no, did not know about any of the benefits of fasting, just as outlined by Dr. Bhatti and Tariq in their talks? So we've got quite a lot of yeses here. A lot of people are probably doing research and know the benefits of fasting. 20% saying no. Obviously, well-being, energy management, etc., is very, very key during these days at the moment. And therefore, you know, we need to make sure in terms of our well-being and mental health is very much looked after, and you know, making sure we're hydrated, looking after ourselves, eating well, sleeping well, and these are key things to maintain that well-being and energy management, and also exercising during this time of lockdown across the board in terms of where we are. And as has been mentioned in the talks, prayers in any way that is you know, as you're able to do it. Obviously, as Muslims, we're saying our prayers at home, and we're remembering the whole community at large in our prayers, that we're able to get through these tough times, and together we're able to get through this and come through better at the end. We're still seeing a large amount on yes. The no's have gone down to 16%, and some that did not know the benefits of fasting at all. Just again, like I said, you know, you're able to follow us, hashtag on Big Virtual Iftar. I'm now going to move on to our question and answer session. Our moderator for today is Nadeem Vanderman. I'm going to hand over to him so that he can take you through the Q&A session.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, ever merciful. Assalamu alaikum to you all. May the peace and blessings be upon you. Thank you, Yusuf. That's very kind and a very useful introduction to the event. And I'm sure that many of the viewers have found the program very entertaining and enjoyable. We're now moving on to the question and answer session. And I hope you'll find this Q&A session informative, educational, and that after this session, your knowledge of Islam will be enhanced. We've received, I'm pleased to tell you, we've received a wide variety of questions from a large number of people, and these questions I'll be putting to our distinguished panel. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel to you in no particular order. They are Tariq Malik, Dr. Jalil Bhatti, and Sabat Karim. You've already heard from Jalil Bhatti and Tariq Malik Saab, and I'll just say a few words about Sabat Karim. In 1912, he graduated from the Institute of Modern Languages and Theology, and since then he's been serving as an imam of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the Huddersfield area. So a warm welcome to our panelists, and I'd now like to start with the first question. And this question I'd like to direct towards Sabat Karim. As we know, Ramadan is a period of spiritual exercise. And so how does fasting affect one's spiritual status? Can an evil soul become noble and vice versa? Sabat Karim, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm not that old. I graduated in 2012 from Jamia UK. Coming to the question, fasting is an old tradition. It predates Islam. All major religions endorse fasting. For example, we know that Hindus fast and it's called upvas. Jews also keep fast on Sabbath. Christians observe 40 days fasting on Lent. And Muslims, as Muslims, we fast in the month of Ramadan for 30 days. Fasting has many benefits, but all religions, including Islam, endorse fasting for spiritual benefits in particular. In the Holy Quran, we see that where the injunction of fasting has been mentioned, God Almighty has categorically mentioned there that fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those who are before you. And then God Almighty says, so that you may become righteous. So the sole purpose of fasting in Islam is to advance in spirituality. And the question that you asked, how does fasting actually affect one's spiritual status? We'll go back to the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him. He has himself, in fact, answered this question. He says that whoever would fast with faith, meaning for the pleasure of God, with the intention of pleasing his creator, and with introspection, with reflection, shall have his past sins forgiven. In relation with this hadith, there's another saying of a prophet, which I will actually mention now, where the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, has mentioned that a believer who observes fasting leaves Ramadan like a newborn baby who is sinless and pure of heart. Now, when we actually merge these two hadiths, we find that, as the analogy has been given here, that a believer who fasts during the month of Ramadan, he comes out as a newborn baby, like a pure baby whose heart is, pure. So as an innocent baby is able to persuade and get whatever he desires from his parents, as an innocent baby quickly develop a bond and connection with all. Likewise, the innocent soul, which develops through passing intensive exercise of fasting, is able to strengthen his or her relationship with its creator, with God. Likewise, the innocent soul, the sinless soul, have his or her prayers answered and experiences love and affection of God. So in essence, by fasting, by going through the intensive exercise of fasting, we enhance in our spirituality. As for the second part of your question, where you mentioned that can an evil soul become noble or vice versa, we see that there is tradition in Judaism, and it's been mentioned in hadith, in the sayings of the Prophet, as well as it's been alluded in the Holy Quran as well. God has spoken of two personages, two people. One is Moses, the prophet of God, and there was another person at the time of Moses, may peace be upon him, who was a great scholar and he was a saint. God Almighty gives this example and tells us that, Moses, the prophet of God, he was brought up in a house of Pharaoh, who was a tyrant who was oppressor, and he was brought up in that house. And the other man, who some historians say his name was also Moses, he was a pious man, he was an educated man. What happened that when God Almighty appointed Moses as a prophet of God, this other person who is also known as Balaam, and also again I said he is referred as Moses as well, he disobeyed the commandment of God and rejected Moses, the prophet of God. And as a result, we see that what happens that he actually degrades in his spirituality, and God Almighty actually punishes him for that as well. So this actually this story tells us that yes, it is possible for anyone to either advance in spirituality and attain nearness to God. At the same time, a person who may be closer to God can lose that connection with God due to his and her bad deeds.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive reply to the question. I'd now like to move on to the second question, and I'd like to direct this towards Tariq Malik, please. So the common argument often put forward by atheists is that if the aim is to become a better human being, then why is it necessary to believe in God? Surely, if one can do good deeds without believing in any religion or in any God. Tariq Malik, please.
Yeah. So I think this question all depends on, as you mentioned, who's asking this question. And we believe, as Muslims, we believe that God is a source of morality and goodness. So the question that I would ask that person would be that, where is your source of goodness and morality? Where is that coming from? Say, for example, if it's coming from science, there are a lot of stuff that is proven according to science, which is good, is not moral. So at the end of the day, if we turn away from God and we're looking elsewhere for source of goodness, we're just going to be punching in just air. We're not going to be able to find it. So on the flip side, even people who don't believe in religion or don't believe in God, they get their morality and goodness from the organized religions, from the word of God, because it has been passed. If you look at any single prophet, each major world religion, there's good and there's evil. And we're looking at from an atheistic perspective that if you look at from a materialistic perspective, we are chasing all these worldly endeavors that we have. And we are still ascribing that to certain role models that we have. I'm going to give you an example of a basketball player or, athletes. People look at Michael Jordan. People look at LeBron James as best player of the world. Then we have Messi, Ronaldo. Now, these people, they're professionals and they're at the top of their games, right? And anybody who wants to actually become really good in soccer or basketball, they have certain role models, right? But when you come to religion, you're saying, I'm simply just going to do my own thing. I don't have a set code to follow, or I don't have a direct commandment or a certain role model to follow. Now, in our case, if people who do believe in God, people who do have religion, we have role models, and those role models are the prophets of God. So as Muslims, we believe in all the past prophets, even prophets before the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And they give us that guidance, that role model, which we can follow. And that code of conduct gives us the source of goodness. And that is the model to follow to become good. Otherwise, you can still be good, but then you're just going to be average. You're not going to get to the top of the game.
Thank you very much, Tariq Malik. That was the most excellent reply. And I think our audience would have benefited enormously from your answer to the question. I'd now like to move on to our next question, and I'd like to put this to Jalil Bhatti. And many non-Muslims find it hard to understand what a Muslim does during the month of Ramadan. What do they do during the day? How do they practice this and that? So could you talk us through what a typical day looks like for a Muslim during Ramadan?
Absolutely. So that's a very good question. And obviously people are very curious with regards to what a Muslim does during Ramadan. So usually the day would start by us waking up early in the morning for just prior to the morning prayer, which is called Fajr. So depending on where you are, this is supposed to be before the sun rises. And even before the prayer, we would have our morning meal, which is called the Sahur. So we initially would have that. Some people also would, even prior to actually starting the meal, would do some optional prayers as well, and they're called Tahajjud. And people would also, at some point in that period, also usually recite the Holy Quran as well, because that's the time where we would receive the most blessing, for a spiritual blessing from reading the Holy Quran. Usually after you had your morning meal, you've done the morning prayer, depending where you are, you might go back to sleep and wake up at the time for when you need to prepare either for the day, either for getting ready for work, or if it's the weekend, you might wake up a little later, but then you would get on with your daily activities, whatever is planned for the day. And then you would either read books or be at work, and then you would prepare for the second prayer, which is called Zohar, and that's in the afternoon, and that's past the point of zenith. So when the sun is at the most highest point, you can't pray at that point, but a moment of time after that, then you can do your afternoon prayers. And then you would get on again with your normal daily routine, either spiritual improvement or doing your work. And then you would get ready for the evening prayer, which is called Asr. And then again, you would either spend some time with the family if you're back from work, or you would look at some online programs, which we have some in our community as well that are going on a daily basis because of lockdown. And you would be listening to them as well to, again, be more focused in regards to your relationship with God. And then, depending on how you want to do things, you might help your spouse in preparing the evening meal things, and you prepare for the iftar, the opening and the breaking of fast. And then you would do some prayers after you've opened it, either immediately after opening the fast, or you would have your meal, and then you would do the nighttime prayers as well. So that's usually, for example, how my routine would look like.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jalil Bhatti, for that most enlightening summary of what a Muslim does during the day in practical terms. So thank you very much for that. And now I'd like to move on to the next question and put this to Sabat Karim. As Muslims, we believe in God, we believe in the Creator, as do the followers of many other religions. But is there any solid evidence that God exists? Can you shed any light on demonstrating and persuading to a person who doesn't belong to a religion that a God does exist?
Yeah, again, I think it's a very important question and often asked question, that how can we prove that God truly exists? It reminds me of an incident which took place in barren land of Arabia years ago. And this incident took place between a scholar and an illiterate Bedouin. What happened that they both spoke. The scholar actually asked the Bedouin that, "Do you believe in God?" And he answered, "Yes, I do." He then asked him that, "What is the proof of God? How can you prove that God exists?" Now this uneducated Bedouin of Arabia, he simply replied, it was a simple answer, but I believe it's a very profound answer. He said that, when we observe waste of camel on the path, we conclude that a camel must have passed from here. He said that when you see, a huge universe around you, stars, moon, mountains, everything around you, rivers, how can you not believe that there must be a creator for all this? How can this be a coincidence? I think this is a powerful argument that we can present that, in order to see that, to see around us that everything has a creator, then this whole universe that we see around us must also has a creator. But however, let me just mention one thing, all these different arguments can prove that there must be a God, there must be a creator, there must be a maker of this, universe. However, to experience God individually, one has to embark on a personal journey. And the path of this journey is set by God himself. God is not a mortal or a physical being. Therefore, the path towards God is not a physical path. It's a path of high morals, virtues, and righteousness. And God says, in the Holy Quran himself, he says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا, which means that those who trend on our path, those who walk on our path, then God Almighty says that I guide them, I bring them closer to me, I guide them towards me. So this is a promise of God. So in essence, to experience God's existence, one has to take a personal journey towards God, which again, as I said, has been set by God himself.
So thank you very much for that answer. I mean, and indeed, this is one of the main purposes of Ramadan, to go on a personal journey and to come closer and closer to the Creator. Unfortunately, that question brings the question and answer session to an end. I hope you all enjoyed it. and I hope you found it useful and thought-provoking. I'd like to thank the panelists for their contribution to the answering of the questions and for their most excellent and thoughtful answers. I'd now like to hand you back to Sabat Kareem, who will lead us in the breaking of the fast. Over to you, Sabat Kareem.
Jazakallah. It is the tradition of Muslims that we always break our fast, we open our fast with dates. And the reason is we follow the practice and tradition of our beloved master, Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him. He would open his fast with 3 dates, but if dates were not available, then he would drink water and then open his fast. And before he would open his fast, he would gratify God, he would thank God for the food and meal that God provides in the following words, which I will read out. However, before I do, I would like to just quickly mention as well that after I read out the dua, the prayer that Prophet Muhammad used to recite, there will be azan announcement, there will be call for azan. However, I would like to request all the viewers to stay tuned after azan, as there will be some final remarks and important announcements will be made by Yusuf Aftab Sahib. So the prayer that the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of God be upon him, used to recite is, Allahumma laka sumtu wa bika amantu wa alayka tawakkaltu wa ala rizqika aftartu. Which means that, O Allah, I observed the fast for your sake, I believe in you, I end the fast by eating that which you have provided me. Now we'll move on to azan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for a very informative evening that we've had today together. We've been through a journey, from Dr. Bhatti speaking to us about the physical and mental health benefits, to Tariq, who spoke to us about the resilience one must create during lockdown, and to the esteemed panel that have taken us through the questions that you have asked and put towards them. I hope it's been an informative session for you, an interactive one with the polling that we've done, engaging and enlightening. I would like to thank all of you for attending today. Without you, it wouldn't have been a success in terms of what we've been able to do and be part and parcel of our celebrations in terms of the Big Virtual Iftar. As we get ready to go and observe our prayers, just a few take-home messages I wanted to give. One was that our next topic, which is on the Saturday, the 16th of May, is on fasting, the door to spiritual growth. I'll very, very much recommend those that have been able to attend today to come again and attend. Please do pass on the message to your friends, colleagues, families to also partake in this event. Do follow us on our Twitter and Facebook accounts, and also hashtag Big Virtual Iftar. Just a final sort of take message from me is, just as people have got together today as part of showing their solidarity for VE Day, where all of us from multifaceted organizations, backgrounds, diversity have come together in those times where we stood together in war. Again, we have a battle to fight in terms of COVID, where we need to make sure that we all stay safe. And when we do come out of this, the level of tolerance, respect, love, affection, and cohesion that should be shown as a society that we have, that we should, what the lessons that we've learned during these crises and lockdown, that we continue to take them forward. Our motto is very simple. It's love for all, hatred for none. I hope and pray that we all exhibit that motto. And if you've enjoyed the session, please do like, share and subscribe to our feeds, and do give us any comments and feedback. Again, from all of us, Jazakallah, thank you. God bless you all and have a safe and blessed evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.